اسمي سهيل بشار، عمري 35 سنة. انخطفت بال1983 وفلتوني بال1993. أنا أصلي من حولة من الجنوب. إذا هالتسجيلات رح تنعرض بطلب ترجمتهم للغة البلد، كل بلد بلغته، يعني بالإنجليزي لأمريكا، بالفرنسي لفرنسا، بالعربي للبلدان العربية، وهكذا دواليك. تبلج صوتي بصوت نسائي لقراية النص بنبرة هادية. ترجموا هالنص بالإنجليزي واعملوا له سوتيتراج. خلوا السوتيتراج تبين بلون رمادي بدون صورة، وإذا بتفضلوا استعملوا اللون الأزرق. أزرق مثل البحر.
Yes, our story is tragic. Yes, it is sordid. But you have to remember that it is first and foremost a story. And in this way, it is familiar to you. I was held for 27 weeks in the same cell with 5 Americans. We ate, slept, talked, played, and cried together. There isn't much that one can hide in a small room with 5 anxious men. Our routine was the same every day for 27 weeks. Nothing changed. After our release, each of the Americans wrote a book, and each book was published. In the 1990s, 5 books written by 5 men who were held in the same 10 by 12 foot room have been published. Why? Why was this story told 5 times? Why were 5 different versions of it published? Because the story is not the same. Or as the hostages like to say, each man experiences captivity in his own way. No doubt this is true. True not only of the experience of captivity, but of all experiences today. But there is more. I remember asking Terry,
for a brief
David,
period in the
Ben,
summer of
Marty,
1985,
and Tom,
6
about
men
how
were
they
held
kidnapped.
together in the same 10 by 12 foot room in the basement of a building somewhere in the southern suburbs of Beirut, close to the airport. 5 were Americans, 1 was Lebanese. They were
I remember asking Terry, David, Ben, Marty, and Tom about how they were kidnapped. They all began their story by talking about the weather. The weather? Why did the Americans begin their story by talking about the weather? Is it because they want to present what happened to them as something that was natural and unpredictable? This would be unfortunate, but expected.
For a brief period in the summer of 1985, 6 men were held together in the same 10 by 12 foot room in the basement of a building somewhere in the southern suburbs of Beirut, close to the airport. 5 were Americans, 1 was Lebanese. They were Benjamin Weir, a Presbyterian minister who had lived in Lebanon for 30 years, Martin Jenko, head of Catholic Charities in Lebanon, Terry Anderson, Middle East Bureau Chief for the Associated Press, David Jacobson, an administrator at the Teaching Hospital of the American University of Beirut, Thomas Sutherland, Dean of Agriculture and Food Sciences at the American University of Beirut, and Suhail Bashar, a low-level employee at the Kuwaiti Embassy in Beirut. The 6 men were brought together just as the arms for hostages negotiations between the United States, Israel, and Iran became serious in early 1985. The arms sales to Iran resulted in the release of Benjamin Weir, Martin Jenko, and David Jacobson in 1985 and 1986. Thomas Sutherland and Terry Anderson were released in 1991.
I'm not sure how or why, but the Americans wanted me and our captors to fuck them, and that they feared that we would rape them. I must say that at times I wished that the Americans would gang up on me and fuck me. You see, they were convinced that they were fucking in the next room every afternoon. They even said that they could hear them. Whatever it was they heard always sounded to me like the fan next door. In the beginning, the Americans did not touch each other. David would get very angry if Terry's feet touched him while they slept. They would come up with the strangest ideas to make sure that their bodies did not touch. After a few weeks, all this changed. No one seemed to care anymore. But they had a very different relation to me from the beginning. They were clearly disgusted with my body, but they touched me all the time. I remember one night in particular, one very hot summer night, when the room was filled with the stench of our sweat. As usual, we were all on the floor, sleeping or trying to sleep. I felt someone's ass rubbing against my crotch. Someone was rubbing himself on me. I became hard, and I don't know why, but I pressed myself against his ass.
The conditions of our captivity
It felt good.
they are far worse now than when
Seconds later, he punched me in the groin, as if my hard-on had provoked him.
that is how we have been living every day, minute by
I stayed
minute,
quiet.
for a year and a half. The pain is real and ever-present 24 hours a day. Sleep provides relief.
On December the 4th, 1991, the last of the American hostages held in Lebanon, Terry Anderson, was released. The release was more than the end of a 7-year ordeal for the longest-held American hostage. It marked the end of a dark and painful chapter, known as the Western Hostage Crisis.
Unfamiliar to many in the West. Based on a different
I am
culture.
David Jacobson,
We should try to
one of
understand
the
it.
3 American hostages in Lebanon, and I am appealing to you for help.
I could hear. I could smell. I could feel the floor with my hands. But I could not see at all. Later, they blindfolded me. They kept saying that if we ever saw or looked at them, intentionally or not, they would kill us. The only time we were without our blindfolds, in the presence of our captors, was when they videotaped and photographed us. But it's not as if we could see. We could not see because the video lights and the flash of the cameras they used blinded us. We thought we were outsmarting them when we discovered that we can see through the slit at the bottom of our blindfolds. We were not. It turns out that they knew very well that we could cheat. In fact, they expected and wanted us to cheat. They wanted us to focus on this opening, this slit,